Some disappearances happen in broad daylight, witnessed by dozens of people, yet remain as mysterious as if they occurred in complete darkness. What I'm about to tell you is the story of Madison Taylor, an Olympic swimmer whose vanishing during a routine training session baffled investigators for 4 years, until a father's desperate search led to a discovery that would expose a truth more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Madison Taylor was the kind of athlete that comes along once in a generation. At 19 years old, she held 3 national records in freestyle swimming and was considered a lock for the U.S. Olympic team heading into the 2020 Tokyo Games. She had the perfect combination of natural talent, fierce determination, and the kind of work ethic that separated champions from everyone else. Growing up in San Diego, Madison had been in the water since she could walk. Her father, Captain David Taylor, was a retired Navy SEAL who understood the ocean like few people did. Her mother, Dr. Sarah Taylor, was a sports medicine physician who had dedicated her career to helping athletes reach their peak performance. Together, they had created the perfect environment for Madison to develop into an elite swimmer. But Madison's journey to Olympic glory hadn't been easy. At 16, she had been diagnosed with a rare heart condition that doctors initially said would end her swimming career. Most athletes would have given up, but Madison fought back with a determination that impressed even her hardest coaches. After 2 surgeries and months of rehabilitation, she had returned to the pool stronger than ever. Madison didn't just swim, her coach, Elena Rodriguez, would later say. She attacked the water like it was a personal enemy she needed to defeat. Every stroke, every breath, every turn was executed with a precision that was almost frightening to watch. By early 2020, Madison was training at the Elite Aquatic Performance Center in Mission Bay, a state-of-the-art facility that attracted Olympic hopefuls from around the world. She was putting in 8 hours a day in the pool, following a grueling regimen designed to peak at exactly the right moment for Olympic trials. March 15, 2020, started like any other training day. Madison arrived at the facility at 5:30 a.m. for her morning session, which would consist of a 4,000-meter distance set followed by sprint intervals. The pool area was monitored by security cameras, and there were always coaches, trainers, and other athletes present during training hours. Madison completed her distance set without any problems, posting times that indicated she was in the best shape of her life. During her brief rest period between sets, she told her coach she wanted to do some open water swimming to break up the monotony of pool training. The Aquatic Performance Center was built right on the bay, with direct access to Mission Bay through a series of protected channels and lagoons. Open water training was a regular part of the program for distance swimmers, and the facility had strict safety protocols including mandatory GPS tracking devices and safety boats that monitored all swimmers. At 7:45 a.m., Madison entered the water wearing her team swimsuit, goggles, swim cap, and a GPS tracking device that would allow coaches to monitor her location throughout her swim. The plan was for her to complete a 2-mile open water loop that would take approximately 45 minutes. 3 safety kayakers were positioned along the route, and Coach Rodriguez was monitoring Madison's progress from the facility's control room, watching her GPS signal move steadily through the water. Everything appeared normal for the first 20 minutes of the swim. Madison was maintaining her usual pace, following the prescribed route, and her GPS signal was transmitting clearly. She had completed about half of the planned distance when something went wrong. At exactly 8:07 a.m., Madison's GPS signal disappeared. Coach Rodriguez initially thought there was a technical malfunction with the tracking equipment. These devices occasionally failed, and swimmers were trained to surface and signal for help if they experienced any equipment problems. But when the safety kayakers reached Madison's last known position, they found only empty water. Madison! Madison, they called out, scanning the surface in all directions. There was no response, no sign of distress, no indication of where she might have gone. Within minutes, the facility's emergency protocols kicked into action. Additional boats were launched, the Coast Guard was notified, and a massive search and rescue operation began. By 9 a.m., there were 12 boats, 2 helicopters, and dive teams combing every inch of Mission Bay. The search continued for 6 days, covering not just the bay but the entire San Diego coastline. They found Madison's GPS device floating near some rocks about a quarter mile from her last known position, but there was no sign of Madison herself. The official investigation concluded that Madison had likely suffered some kind of medical emergency while swimming, possibly related to her heart condition, and had drowned. Her body, investigators theorized, had been carried out to sea by tides and currents. But David Taylor refused to accept that explanation. Madison was the strongest swimmer I've ever known, he insisted to anyone who would listen. She could tread water for hours if she had to. And her heart condition was completely under control, she'd been cleared by the best cardiac specialists in the country. David, using his military training and connections, launched his own investigation. He studied tide charts, current patterns, and weather conditions from the day Madison disappeared. He interviewed every person who had been at the facility that morning. He had the GPS device analyzed by electronics experts to determine if it had malfunctioned or been tampered with. Nothing made sense. For 4 years, David Taylor searched. He took early retirement from his security consulting business to dedicate himself full-time to finding his daughter. He learned to scuba dive so he could personally explore underwater areas around Mission Bay. He worked with private investigators, oceanographers, and even psychics, anyone who might provide a clue about what had happened to Madison. The search consumed his life and strained his marriage. Sarah, while supportive of David's efforts, eventually reached a point where she needed to accept Madison's death and begin the grieving process. David couldn't let go. "She's out there somewhere," he would tell his wife during their increasingly frequent arguments. "I can feel it. I'm not giving up until I know what really happened." On March 15, 2024, exactly 4 years after Madison's disappearance, David was conducting one of his regular searches of the outer areas of Mission Bay. He had expanded his search pattern over the years, exploring areas that the original Coast Guard investigation had deemed unlikely but not impossible. He was diving near a cluster of underwater rocks about 2 miles from where Madison had last been seen when he noticed something unusual. Caught in a crevice between 2 large boulders, partially hidden by marine growth, was what appeared to be a piece of fabric. David carefully extracted the object and brought it to the surface. What he found made his heart stop. It was a swimsuit, specifically, a Team USA training suit identical to what Madison had been wearing when she disappeared. But this suit showed signs of damage that were inconsistent with 4 years of natural wear from ocean conditions. The fabric had been cut, not torn. There were clean, deliberate incisions that suggested the suit had been removed with a knife or similar sharp instrument. David immediately contacted the FBI, and the suit was sent for forensic analysis. DNA testing confirmed what David already knew in his heart: this was Madison's swimsuit, and the damage pattern suggested it had been forcibly removed. But the discovery raised more questions than it answered. How had Madison's suit ended up in this location, so far from where she had disappeared? And if someone had removed her suit, what had happened to Madison herself? The FBI reopened the case with renewed interest, treating Madison's disappearance as a potential kidnapping rather than a drowning. Agent Lisa Chen, who specialized in cold cases, took charge of the investigation. "The condition of this swimsuit changes everything," Agent Chen explained to David. "This wasn't a medical emergency or an accidental drowning. Someone took your daughter." The investigation that followed would uncover a criminal conspiracy that shocked the law enforcement community and explained why Madison Taylor had vanished without a trace. Using advanced forensic techniques that hadn't been available in 2020, investigators analyzed every piece of evidence from Madison's disappearance with fresh eyes. They discovered microscopic traces of a powerful sedative on the recovered GPS device, evidence that someone had drugged Madison and then disposed of her tracking equipment to make it appear she had drowned. Further investigation revealed that Madison had been targeted by a human trafficking ring that specialized in kidnapping young women with specific physical characteristics. The ring, which operated throughout California and Mexico, had been monitoring Madison for weeks before her disappearance. The perpetrators had used sophisticated planning and inside knowledge of the facility's security protocols to execute the kidnapping. Someone with access to the Aquatic Performance Center had provided detailed information about Madison's training schedule and the facility's safety procedures. The breakthrough came when investigators traced financial records and discovered that one of the facility's part-time employees, Miguel Santos, had received several large cash payments in the weeks leading up to Madison's disappearance. Santos, who worked as a maintenance worker and had access to all areas of the facility, had disappeared shortly after Madison went missing. When authorities tracked down Santos in Tijuana, Mexico, he initially denied any involvement in Madison's disappearance. But faced with DNA evidence and financial records linking him to the trafficking ring, he eventually agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Santos revealed that Madison had been drugged while swimming and then pulled into a boat by members of the trafficking ring. She had been taken to a remote location on the Mexican coast, where she was held for several months before being sold to buyers in Eastern Europe. She fought them every step of the way, Santos told investigators. Even drugged, even outnumbered, she never stopped trying to escape. They had to keep her heavily sedated because she was so dangerous to their operation. The revelation that Madison was likely still alive, somewhere in Eastern Europe, galvanized international law enforcement efforts. Interpol issued alerts, and specialized units that focused on human trafficking began working with local authorities in countries where the trafficking ring was known to operate. The search for Madison Taylor became an international effort involving law enforcement agencies from 12 countries. Using the information provided by Santos and other arrested members of the trafficking ring, investigators began the painstaking process of tracing Madison's movements over the 4 years since her disappearance. The trail led through a network of safe houses, illegal detention facilities, and criminal organizations that stretched from Mexico to Romania. At each location, investigators found evidence that Madison had been there, but also that she had been moved before they could reach her. "She's been fighting them this whole time," Agent Chen told David during one of their regular briefings. "Every location we've investigated shows signs that she tried to escape or signal for help. Your daughter hasn't given up, and neither can we." After 4.5 years in captivity, Madison was finally free. But the young woman who was rescued bore little resemblance to the confident Olympic athlete who had disappeared from Mission Bay. She was malnourished, traumatized, and struggling with the psychological effects of years of captivity. The breakthrough finally came in September 2024, when Romanian police raided a compound outside Bucharest based on intelligence gathered from the trafficking ring investigation. In a hidden basement, they found 12 young women who had been kidnapped from various countries and held for years. One of those women was Madison Taylor. David and Sarah flew to Romania immediately, but the reunion was both joyful and heartbreaking. Madison had survived, but the ordeal had changed her in ways that would take years of therapy and support to address. "I never stopped believing you would find me," Madison told her father during one of their first conversations after the rescue. "Even when they told me my family had given up looking, even when they tried to break my spirit, I knew you wouldn't quit." The process of bringing Madison home and helping her readjust to life as a free person would be long and difficult. She had missed 4 crucial years of her life, including what should have been her Olympic debut. The swimming career that had defined her identity was effectively over. But Madison Taylor was alive, and she was home. The trafficking ring responsible for her kidnapping was dismantled, with over 30 arrests made across multiple countries. Miguel Santos and the other conspirators who had enabled Madison's kidnapping received long prison sentences. The Aquatic Performance Center implemented new security measures to prevent similar incidents. Madison's story became a rallying point for efforts to combat human trafficking and support survivors of these crimes. She eventually became an advocate for other trafficking victims, using her platform to raise awareness about the ongoing reality of modern slavery. "I lost 4 years of my life," Madison said in her first public interview after returning home. "But I'm not going to let those people take one more day from me. I'm alive, I'm free, and I'm going to make sure other people get the same chance." David Taylor's refusal to give up hope had literally saved his daughter's life. His persistence in searching for answers, his rejection of the official conclusion that Madison had drowned, and his dedication to finding the truth had ultimately led to her rescue and the dismantling of a major criminal organization. "A parent's love doesn't have an expiration date," David reflected. "When your child is missing, you don't stop looking just because other people think it's hopeless." Madison needed me to keep searching, and I'm grateful I never gave up. The story of Madison Taylor's disappearance and rescue became a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely explanations turn out to be the truth, and that the power of love and determination can overcome even the most desperate circumstances. Madison never returned to competitive swimming, but she found new purpose in her advocacy work and in helping other families navigate the nightmare of having a missing loved one. Her survival, after 4.5 years in captivity, stands as a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure even the most horrific circumstances. The piece of fabric that David found caught between those underwater rocks had seemed like such a small thing, just a fragment of a swimsuit, damaged and forgotten. But it had been the key that unlocked the truth and ultimately led to Madison's freedom. Sometimes the smallest discoveries lead to the biggest revelations, and sometimes the evidence that solves a case has been waiting patiently for years for someone with enough love and determination to find it. Madison Taylor was supposed to be competing in her second Olympics by now. Instead, she's fighting a different kind of battle, helping other survivors reclaim their lives and working to ensure that no other athlete, no other young person, falls victim to the kind of evil that stole 4 years of her life. But she's alive, she's free, and she's home. And for a father who never stopped searching, that's the only victory that truly matters. Don't forget to like the videos and subscribe to the channel for more short stories.